All right, now that we saw how to find repositories of interest in console.gh, I'm going to show you the kind of actions that you can do once you find the repository you're interested in. And to do that, I'm going to switch to this demo org file here. So we have let me evaluate this first. We have this variable console.gh repo action that takes a function that will run on the candidate that you select in the mini buffer. So for example, I've defined this console.gh repo browse URL action, which opens the URL page of the repository in external browser, and this is the default setting in console.gh. So let's evaluate. Let's take a look at this variable, and yeah, and you can see in the document this variable defines the function that is used when selecting a repo. By default, it is bound to browse URL action. All right. So let's see how that works. We're going to do search repos again, and let's look for console.gh. Why not? Okay, I'm going to go select my console.gh repository. And as you can see, preview is not on because the preview key is set to meta O still. So if I hit meta O, I can see a preview. And when I hit enter and I select this candidate in the mini buffer, you notice that it opens that the URL in the browser. Let's go back here. So that's the default action. It's not that useful perhaps, but if that's something that you're most interested in, you can just go ahead. It kind of optimizes the performance because it's not really loading anything into Emacs, and it's just jumping into the browser, but perhaps it's not the most useful function here. The next function that I have here is for seeing previews. This is essentially loading README as you see in the preview buffer. Um, so let me evaluate this code and then go back and select console.gh. So now this time when I select the repository, it loads the README in an Emacs buffer in org format, just like it does when you look at preview of the repos in Emacs. Okay. Again, probably not that useful since you already can look at previews without even selecting the repository, but this one, browse files, is perhaps one of the most useful ones. So in this case, you can browse the file contents of the repository inside Emacs and then open those files in an Emacs buffer and look at them. So let's evaluate this code now and run the same search again. Okay, so now if I select my console.gh repository, you notice that it's asking me to choose a branch. So let's look at main branch. And now I see a list of all the files in this repository. The view here, I may change it in the future to make it look more like the find file UI that you have in Emacs, where you can select folders and then subfolders dynamically. But for now, you see a list of all the files in this repository, so you can quickly search for any file in this repository. So in this case, let's say embark, and we can look at this file console.gh embark that provides some embark integration in my console.gh repository. All right. Let's go back now. Then, uh, other than that, we also have a function for cloning a repository. So if I evaluate that and go do the same search again and go select this repository, now it's asking me if this is the repository I want to clone. And it asks me to provide a folder where I want to clone it. So let's do it maybe here. And then it's asked me for a name. So do I want to save it as console.gh? Yes. And a message says this repository was cloned to that folder. So let's go check if it was indeed. Yes, so you can see this repository is cloned, and I have all the files here on my local machine. And then one last one here is a fork action. Uh, so this is useful if you want to fork someone else's repository into your own GitHub account. Um, so now I cannot do the console.gh because that's my own repository. So let's do vertical. And this first one, minat, and if I enter, it says in the message, you can see minat vertical was forked. And let's see if that is indeed the case. So I go console.gh orgs and I select my own account. And if I look for vertical, yeah, you can see that now I have a copy of the vertical repository forked under my own account, and it says also public and fork. Okay, so those are the kind of basic functions that I provide in the package, and depending on your use case, you can choose what would make more sense as your default action when you select repositories.